think there's a nice analogy here in the history of chess, right, where initially, chess comes in and the humans are always beating these systems, and then it was sort of humans plus these systems were really good, and now actually the systems are better than any humans in the loop at all. And so I think we're going to have that same kind of progression, and people should just be aware of that as we go.
Hello everyone, and welcome to MIT SMR India. Today I'm privileged to have Neil Thompson, Director of FutureTech Research Project at MIT. I'll shoot my questions to you, Neil, right away. From your research at FutureTech, tell us, Neil, what is it that makes the current technological wave structurally different from the preceding ones?
Yeah, so this is a great question because, of course, AI has been around for decades in some form or another. The thing that really makes us different is that there has been now for more than a decade a roadmap to getting ever better systems. And that's been by what are sometimes called the scaling laws, this idea that if we throw more computing power, more data at these systems, they perform better. And it's been a remarkable roadmap, right? This is really what has allowed the OpenAIs and Anthropics of the world to scale up their systems in the way they have and to be able to invest now billions of dollars in training these systems, knowing ahead of time what they should expect to be able to get. I think that's really what makes it different, because in the past we've always been sort of looking to ourselves and saying, okay, well, what other sort of insight might we have to make the systems go better? Now we have this very clear path that if we just invest a little bit more, gather more data, we're going to be able to do it well. And as we've seen, that's been a remarkably successful path for them.
True that. All right, you've spoken about the exaggerated expectations around autonomous AI and the real deployable applications that we see today. In your view, where are businesses most susceptible to buying into the hype, and what are the warning signs in the AI adoption roadmap that the leaders often miss?
Yeah, so I think a really important one here is to think about how accurate each step in a process needs to be for it to be truly autonomous. Because you might say, oh, I have this system, maybe some vendor shows it to me and I say, oh, it's 99% effective. And you think, fantastic at solving this thing, and 99% effective at this thing, and 99% effective at this thing. But if for your autonomous system to work, it needs to do 100 of those steps together, those errors compound and compound and compound, and the final result could actually be a real disaster. And so one of the things that people really have to be aware of is to say, okay, as we're putting these steps together, making this autonomous agent do all of these things, okay, like what is the success rate on all of those things, and can we meet that requirement? And so, business leaders should ahead of time be very, very conscious and say, okay, I know that humans doing this task are this good. Actually, when I measure it carefully, can the autonomous system be as good? And if not, how am I going to sort of adapt for it? And often what we see is the way they adapt for it is by making it not quite so autonomous and adding a little bit of human touch at the very end.
Yeah, human in the loop. All right. Many current enterprise AI tools support decision support systems rather than decision-making systems. Based on your work at MIT's initiative on the digital economy, at what point do you think AI will shift from assistance to autonomy and become economically transformative? And what are the sectors that will see the shift first?
Yeah, so I think this is something that we're going to see a lot over different areas. And I think we should think of this as being sort of a process whereby the quality of the system output goes better and better and better. And we change the way we think about putting it into a business as it gets better. And so, for example, in customer service, one of the things you will see is initially there'll be a customer service bot, and it will maybe perform as well as the bottom 10% of your employees, and then the bottom 30% of your employees, and then half of your employees, and so on, and it sort of makes its way up. And I think what we should think about is, while it's on its way up there, you'd say, well, I don't want a bot that is my bottom 10% of employees. I don't want that quality being the general thing. There it's got to be a decision support because I want to have some checks on top of it. At the point where it gets really, really good, we want to switch it out, right? And so I think there's a nice analogy here in the history of chess, right, where initially, chess comes in and the humans are always beating these systems, and then it was sort of humans plus these systems were really good, and now actually the systems are better than any humans in the loop at all. And so I think we're going to have that same kind of progression, and people should just be aware of that as we go. In terms of which sectors and what kind of areas are going to be affected, I think the key thing here is that when you're trying to improve an AI system, those last few percentage points of accuracy are incredibly expensive to get. Often they can be, as much as like significant steps before that. And so often you want to say, well, if you have a process that only needed 80% accuracy or something like that, okay, that's something that can probably be made autonomous pretty quickly. If you have something that's 99.9% accurate is what's needed, that's going to take a long time to be that good. Automation can be good or bad for the people in those jobs. Right? And so I think people traditionally think of, well, if I have 10 tasks in my job and AI automates one of those things, that I only have 90% left, that might be bad for me. But sometimes that task that gets automated is the one that was like the least expert thing you did, and you spend more time doing the really expert things. That's actually pretty good for you. And in fact, some of the research we've done shows your wages tend to go up. Where of course, if it's your most expert thing that gets automated, that tends to be pretty bad for you personally, and it goes down. And so when businesses are preparing for this, one of the key things to do is to say, like, automation, even of like a particular task, can affect different people differently. And so you need to take that into account and say, okay, these people are likely to have their wages go up, but there'll maybe be fewer of them. These people, their wages is going to go down. Maybe there'll be more of those people. So you need to start thinking about that as you strategically plan. And some of the work that we've done is started to lay the groundwork for being able to distinguish those kind of roles for people. In terms of the organizational structures and how they're going to evolve, I mean, I think the key thing there is to say, as we build these systems, we have to think that often they're not as accurate as a traditional system that you might have. So let me give a very concrete example, right? We don't ask humans to calculate the results in a spreadsheet anymore, right? The spreadsheet does it. We just have the humans do it. We don't bother checking that because it's basically 100% accurate when you do it. Many of these systems are not 100% accurate when you run them, right? And so that means that you have to have some sort of catch. And so what that means is that leaders have to think about automation with AI differently. The sort of modularity that we often had from previous systems is very hard to get, and you really need to get all the way to that autonomous system to get that full modularity. Often what we're going to have to do is say, well, we have a system, we put in AI here, but then we build in things around the AI to make sure that it's going to work properly. And so it's a different kind of automation, and leaders are definitely going to have to think about that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you share a little bit more information about FutureTech's case study or partner companies where autonomous AI has moved beyond the pilot stage and created a measurable strategic advantage or transformed workflows?
Sure. So I actually want to give you an example that is sort of related to that, but it's actually a company that wanted a fully autonomous workflow and realized they couldn't quite get there. So this was a case that we did with an insurance company. So the insurance company said, when people get in a car accident, we want them to just be able to take pictures of the car, have the pictures go into the system, have the AI evaluate it, and give them an offer and say, oh, we think this is like $2,000 of damages. We're going to continue to check, say yes, right? And what they found, of course, was that if you make errors there, it's very, very costly, because if you offer someone too much money, they're very happy to say thank you very much and put it in their pocket. If you offer them too little, right, then they get very upset. You get unhappy customers. And often they'll just then go to someone else and you're going to pay more in the end anyway. And so what they realized was, even though they wanted this fully autonomous system, what they ended up doing was saying it became a decision support, as you said. So they built a system that pre-filled the form for the human to think about it, but then the human looked at it and said, is that right? Yes, yes, yes. That one isn't right. Okay, take that out. And that made it better. And it was enormously successful for them. Their costs went way down. The processing speed improved by a factor of about 5, something like that. So it was very, very important for them in terms of their process that they were doing.
Okay, all right. Historically, transformative technologies have widened productivity gaps between early and late adopters. Do you expect autonomous AI to accelerate this divergence, and what will that mean for competitive strategy?
Yes, this is a great point. So I definitely do expect it to widen it, although I think a key question here is between who? Right? So like many tools, I mean, we expect it to make firms more productive. And of course, if they're more productive, that will sort of widen this gap between folks if some people adopt it and some people don't. The question, though, is it the firm themselves that have built the tool, or is it something that's bought from a third party, right? Because of course, if it's bought from a third party, then your competitor can also buy it, right? And then it just becomes everybody, the tables are shifting, but everyone sort of remains at the same level. I think for other firms who are actually developing it themselves, the big question is going to be around who has the important data. Because training these systems to be really good at very specific tasks often requires a large store of data that you have. And so if you are a firm that can get there first, you can gain market share, you maybe get more and more data, you end up with a virtuous cycle where more data gives you an advantage, the advantage gives you more data, and so on, and you keep going around it. And so I think that's the dynamic that firms should be thinking about now and saying, well, who has the great data in this area? What is that going to mean for their ability to build really cutting edge systems? People often want to give an answer that is something like, oh, we need to be more creative, or we need to be something. I don't think it's going to be sort of that cut and dry of like this category or that category. I think more what you want to think about is, this is a tool, right? That tool is going to be powerful in a bunch of areas, and those areas are developing, but people can get a sense of what's out there. What you want to do is say, like, I don't want that tool to be replacing exactly what I do. I want it to be sort of adjacent to it, right? So if I'm an artist and I see, okay, it's producing movies or art in these kind of way, don't think of it as like, okay, well, I want to be competing directly with it. You say, like, how can I harness what that is doing to do something sort of next to it, right? How can you be the marketing person who can now generate 10 different ads, right, on the fly to immediately be able to produce things? And so that idea of what's the adjacency that's quite close to it, but where you say, my skill is harnessing this tool rather than competing with it. I think that's what people should be aiming for.
Right. Okay, the last one for you is, looking ahead 5 to 10 years, what is the most underappreciated way autonomous AI could reshape business models or industry structures?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing here really is around sort of how fast these things are going to develop. And so what I mean by that is, I think a lot of firms say they'll do a push into AI, right? And sometimes that push will be successful in some areas, sometimes it won't, right? And they'll sort of take the lessons there and say, okay, well, this is what we think is going to be true for the next 5 years or something like that, right? And I don't think that's the right way to think about it. I think these capabilities are developing so quickly, the algorithms are getting better so fast, right, that you need to be thinking about, okay, if it's not the right time today, okay, can I do some projection that says when those improvements happen 2 years from now, it will be good, and then if that's so, what should I do on my roadmap to get towards it? So that idea of sort of preparing for it in advance in the right way, I think will be very important.